Consciousness chats. Everybody, if you haven't subscribed or liked yet, please do so. We have the amazing Kristen McAdams with us. Everyone do a nice like, put your comments about how fabulous she looks in her denim jacket. She is a mental health professional and is the, well, shall we say, creator of the Psychologym podcast, which is available on all the major platforms. Go ahead, check it out. She's got some fabulous guests and is also sponsored by a comedy club. So you know there's going to be laughter in that. So let's get straight to it. How would you describe the taste of a banana to someone who's never eaten one?
Diving right in. I would think it would have to depend on the type of banana. Like, is it ripe? Is it like overripe? Right? Like, it depends on the type of banana. And that's like the quintessential mental health question, right? Like
The type of the banana?
Everything in mental health the answer is it depends.
So that's why people are in therapy for years.
That's it. We keep them hooked because it depends.
Do you like bananas yourself?
I do. I used to eat a lot of them. I don't really eat a whole lot of them anymore, though.
So let's say it's a ripe banana. It's yellow.
So I would have to say it's kind of sweet. I have to say it like tastes yellow, but I think that's because it's yellow anyways, right? Because it's a banana. I'd have to call it kind of sweet. And that's the only thing. That's the only word. How do you really describe a banana?
Everyone is different, let me tell you. And if you want to hear all about people and what they think bananas taste like, just go check out all of the other interviews because everyone has a very different response. I say, forget ink blots. Just ask people what a banana tastes like.
And that's it.
That's
Job
it.
Interview over.
When did you have your first existential life crisis as a child?
I don't know if I had it as a child, but after I got divorced, I had a major life crisis, major existential life crisis, and it was awesome. I would highly recommend. Everyone should have one. And it's a life-changing experience. Yeah, I had it after I got divorced. I'm sure I probably had one when I was little, but it was probably over something stupid, you know.
Well, I don't think necessarily stupid. When we're younger, it's really a delusion is smashed, right? The questions surface up. The brain says, hang on, this isn't. And then the perception of life changes as a result.
Mm-hmm. I have a abnormal fear of like losing things. Like if I'm on like a chairlift or a zip line and my shoe falls off, or like my hat flying off if I'm in a convertible or something like that. So I have a very weird fear of that. And I think that if I had one when I was a kid, it was definitely around like losing a shoe on a zip line or something like that.
You did that a lot as a kid?
We used to go to a amusement park all the time up in New England called Canopy Lake Park. And they had like one of those ski lift rides, and it would take you all the way around the park. So you'd see the park, and we used to always like dangle our feet and swing our feet. So I think it had something to do. It must have been there. Or on a glass bottom boat. I slid through the bars of a glass bottom boat once when I was a kid, and I like fell through the bars and caught myself right before I like fell into the glass. So
whoa.
Yeah, it might have been something to do with that too.
So you don't ever walk on clear surfaces?
No, it's like a mental game now too. There's a bar that we do comedy in, and it has like one of those kegs like in the ground, and it has the glass, over it. And it's always like a mental challenge for me. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to step on the glass. And I always do. I always make it a point. And sometimes I get sassy about it if I'm in my heels, and I strut.
Oh, okay. Did you ever step on the cracks or not step on the cracks as a child?
Yeah, I think we did for fun, but just for fun. The floor is lava. That was always a good one.
Oh, okay. What were you told would happen if you stepped on a crack?
Well, it was always just that rhyme, right? Like step on a crack, break your mother's back. But I was just like, I don't know. It never resonated.
Yeah, I think because I grew up with Winnie the Pooh, it always would go to Winnie the Pooh where they would not step on the cracks. Pooh didn't like that. So I don't remember. Well, I remember reading that. I don't remember, breaking my mother's back or anything,
Yeah, we had some weird rhyme. It was step on a crack, break your mother's back. And then I think there was like other stuff to it, but I don't remember what it was. But I think it was like more of like a game, you know what I mean? Like just trying to jump around the cracks and things like that. But I think there was a period in time where I would like intentionally not, like, you get those little minor OCD things where you're like, nope, not going to do it, or I'm going to do it.
Right. Did you have as a child a moment where you awakened to the wisdom that adults don't really have it all going on and they're just trying to be in life?
I kind of feel like I always felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I feel like I grew up, my parents were divorced when I was very young, and I lived between their houses pretty frequently. I had kind of an interesting upbringing. Two very different families. One's Jehovah's Witness, and one was another organization. And it was just like always in between these two worlds, and like kind of growing up in a real life conspiracy theory. So I kind of grew up just always observing, being like, which would explain why I'm a therapist now.
Did you come to be a therapist because you had experiences of it helping yourself with changes of perception?
I did eventually. I don't think it started out that way. I think it started out because I had like a general fear of the world and people, because I didn't understand them. And I thought that if I could study psychology, I could understand people better, and that would make me feel safer. And then throughout the course of my career, I've been studying it. I mean, I've been a psychologist, studying it, working in it, whatever, for 20 something years now. And over the years, that reason of staying in it and doing it and being a part of it and the things you learn along the way is always changing. So, I think it started with the fear, but it evolved multiple times over the course of several years.
So if you always had that perception, have you ever had the opposite happen where you've observed maybe a young child and be awakened to how wise they are?
I think so. Yeah. I think I've worked with kids in the past, and you see that a lot with kids that come to therapy in a lot of ways. If the therapy is their choice, right? Like if they're forced into therapy, like kids tend to not want to be there and they tend to be resistant. But if you're working with them in a therapeutic context, you tend to see that awakening when they're kind of like, like I do know some things, and I always think that kids know better than adults 100% anyways. Like they're completely attuned to the world in a way that we're jaded in a lot of ways. We grow up and we have all these experiences, and these experiences create these fears, and then all of a sudden we're operating out of these fears, and then we're just attached to all these meanings and these ideas, and kids don't really have that. They're kind of free from that. So
Is there a Ken Robinson was, I don't know if you know him, an educator in the UK, and talked about how if you interview a young child at kindergarten and you give them, a paperclip, for example, they can come up with so many different ways it can be used where it's almost genius level. And then you check in with them a few years later, and by the time they get to secondary school where they're considered educated, they actually come out as nowhere nearly creative. And that's been the education has stamped out the creativity, the genius within them.
Yeah, they're taught the meaning of something, and then they just go, oh, this is what this means. And then they just take it as truth, and they take it as fact, and then they move on to the next thing. And you wind up with all these associations that you didn't know don't have to be like that. We don't have to live in that construct. So I tell people all the time, everything's a social construct, everything.
Do people have a hard time accepting that?
I don't say it often out loud, so I don't know. Sometimes I'll say it and people are like, oh, it's a relief. Like I've seen that, but I think I'm pretty selective usually about who I say it to.
And a social construct, like, let's have a definition of that then.
Well, even like the example that you just made of the paperclip, right? Like we accept the paperclip as a paperclip because we're told that that's what it does. It clips paper. Right. But if you give a kid a paperclip and you tell them to do something creative with it, like they might turn it into a dinosaur, or they might turn it into, an earring, or who knows what.
Have you thought about what you would like to leave after your body drops for the world to be a better place from you being here?
I hope that the work I do, I work really hard to try to be a better person in a lot of ways, just in terms of taking care of myself. Because when I take care of myself, I'm a lot happier, and then it's a lot easier for me to be around, and then I'm more likely to smile at somebody, or I'm more likely to have a conversation or be open to things. And I think that when we take care of ourselves, it paves the way for other people to do that. And I think that I don't want my impact to necessarily be like, oh, here lies, Kristen McAdams, she did XYZ. I want it to be more of like, I impacted your day today. I made you feel good if I gave you a smile. So then you went on and paid it forward and smiled to somebody else. Because I think that when we care for ourselves and we improve our own lives, that we inevitably wind up improving the immediate lives around us, and so on, like a ripple in the water, the butterfly effect.
Have you had that experience where someone smiled at you and it did change your day?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. I've had like these sort of really powerful life altering experiences just with simple exchanges at a store or on the street or whatever. I mean, you can have the big, profound life altering changes from the long-term relationships and things like that. But I find that that's way more impactful when you can connect with somebody that's just like a moment in time where, you're standing with a stranger at a bus stop or something, and you both see something kind of funny, and you're the only ones that saw it, and you kind of like, see that? And then you just have this like little moment of, huh. And then you go on about your day, and it just sort of elevates the energy.
Moment of connection.
Shared experience.
Do you have a specific example you remember where it really did stick in your mind?
Let me think about that. I don't know. I've had many of them. Not obviously not in 2020. I mean, there's none of that. None of that happened in 2020. So I think it's kind of hard to remember pre-COVID what life was like. But I feel like there was many instances like that. Especially with the kind of work I do. You create these bonds with people too, because it doesn't have to necessarily be a stranger, right? Like technically your clients come in and they are strangers. So you get to meet somebody for the first time, get to know them in a way that other people don't get to know them. And that's really cool too. So I know a lot of people, I connect with a lot of people, and I talk to a lot of people. So it's like kind of having those moments all the time. I think the most recent one might have been at a comedy club with a person who isn't a friend, but he's like a new friend, and just having one of those moments where we both realized it was safe to have a odd conversation and just like totally just throw out all our weird opinions. And it was such a fun conversation to have. And we talked for hours, and it was just like one of those great moments where it was like, oh yeah, like, I don't know how people feel about this, but I'm going to say this out loud to you. And then you don't have to agree with me, but I want to hear what you think too. And then we just add value to each other's lives by doing that. I think that was probably the most recent time. And it wasn't necessarily a friend or somebody I knew very well, but it was just in that moment, it was just sharing stories and opinions and thoughts. And I miss that.
Yeah, that's quite magical when there's a risk taken, right? To take that risk. And sometimes it works wonders, and other times you get talked to.
Or a door slammed in your face, or this motion, or and then it just takes down everything. I just actually posted on my social media today. I'm like, it's okay to go cry and scream in your car, but just, it's like a release to do that. I was like, but just, it's also can be a release to do it in people's faces. But when you do it in people's faces, right, like there's negative energy exchange there that kind of like again, like a ripple in the water. And if the ripple hits the rock on the shore, it bounces back to you. Now you're just exchanging all this negative energy back and forth. It's like, but go ahead, go scream and cry and freak out in your car. Just don't be screaming in each other's faces because you disagree on an opinion.
Right. Have you had moments where you've been overwhelmed with emotion in seemingly in an inappropriate place, and actually it benefited the, I guess, surroundings as a result?
I don't know. I mean, if it's joy or excitement or something like that, right? Like I always associate that with like maybe like festivals or concerts or things like that. There's nothing I love more than a live music show, because there's something about music, and like there's actually a lot of research around crowds like that when they get together and they're there to experience the joy, and they're there to experience just the beat of the music, and to have that shared experience.
Mm.
That's really cool for me. I don't think I've really been in a place where I've had a terribly emotional reaction that's been sadness or anger or fear that's gone really well for anybody else in the room. Unless you count the one time I got like over 600 on the punching bag at a bar, which was fun for everybody. I was angry and I hit the bag pretty hard, and I was like surprised myself, and then everybody else was surprised, and we were all like, that was cool. And that was, I mean, that's the closest thing I've seen to anger or or anything like that making an impact that was beneficial for anybody.
Have you, after you went through your divorce, was the pivotal moment that changed your perception or your crisis when you had the decision to leave, or was it as a result of after the decision was made?
I think it was really the whole process. It was sort of intuitively knowing that it was coming, and having to go through the process of being like the scorned wife. Like he left me for this 20-year-old cocktail waitress, was cheating on me for 6 months. It was like a whole thing.
Oh,
Pretty open about the story, because I know that there's other people that have probably experienced that and might feel alone, so I don't mind sharing it. So it was sort of that whole process of like intuitively knowing and trying to work through something that wasn't going to work, and then also walking through the shame and guilt of like just being who you are. Like sometimes you just have to sit with who you are, and the things that you've done, the things you don't like about yourself, the fears of like what other people think of you, the anger and the sadness of having set up a life with somebody and having that life just not be real anymore, and going through that whole process. And then afterwards, I remember the day he moved out, I was really happy, and a friend called and she was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Actually, I'm dancing around my kitchen making muffins in my high heels." And she's like, "That's not the answer I thought I was gonna get." And I was like, "No, I'm really happy." And then there was this whole process of growth afterwards, where I got to renegotiate relationships and renegotiate my relationship with myself, and figure out really who I was. Because when you come up against and sit with those feelings of guilt and shame and fear and anger, then you really get to know yourself in a way that you become kind of unshakable after that. And you get this sort of I don't know, maturity about you that you can't really get in any other way. So yeah, it
Did
was
you,
good.
did you find that the social construct of marriage, right, that brought up shame where there wasn't really any shame that really needed to be there?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the learning process, right? Was that like, oh, I did this. Like we should never have been married in the first place, and I did this because I wanted to prove that somebody could love me. I wanted to prove that um I could have like the white picket fence and the perfect life with the husband, and we were going to have kids, and had all this big friend group and dogs in our house, and everything like was picture perfect. I was going to school. I was going to grad school, and I was just in this great place in my life. And I was like, wow, like I've arrived. It's here. This is the thing. And the whole time he was cheating on me. And I was like, oh, now I'm the scorned wife, right? That's another social construct, right? Like now I'm the woman that's wearing lingerie for the pizza guy. Not that I did that, but that's like like a media movie cliche that you see of like these women trying to get laid by anybody. And it's like this whole, you go through all these different like social constructs of these ideas that you thought existed, and they just don't have to exist. And then you realize, which is interesting, is that we are meaning making machines as humans, and we can make whatever meaning we want. And because of that, it's very scary, like at first, because you're like, oh, I can make any meaning I want, then what's the point? But then when you realize that you can narrate and empower yourself to take control of the rest of your life or take control of the narratives in your life and empower yourself to heal in that way, you're like, oh, I don't have to make these meanings anymore. And then everything that becomes frustrating and angry and shameful and all that stuff kind of loses its power because you're like, oh, well, that doesn't matter to me anymore because I don't think of it in that way anymore.
Are you saying the word meetings or meanings?
Meaning.
Okay,
Meaning
so
making.
you're saying that we are meaningful people?
We make meaning,
Oh,
right?
right.
Meaning making machines. So like we want to make meaning of things because we neurologically, we like to organize things so that we can keep ourselves safe. Because if we can organize it and make sense out of it, then we can be safe in the world. Like, you know, poisonous berries are bad, stove is hot, things like that. Those are always the basic examples. But once you realize that we're the ones that are doing that, we're the ones
Mhm.
that are facilitating all of this meaning, you have an existential crisis because you're like, well, then what's the point? Yep. And then you realize, oh, well, all of this stuff now loses its power because well, I don't have to make that meaning.
Yes. And then do you think you would have ever been able to have that awakening if it wasn't for the divorce?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what everything I've gone through has been cause and effect in my life, you know, like this, then that, then this, then that. Like if I hadn't had this, then I wouldn't learned that. So I've always been pretty grateful for the experiences that I've had, even some of the ones that I don't really like. Um, but I don't know if I would have gone through that because I think that so much of my stuff was my attachment stuff and I don't like to use the attachment really because that's just another label meaning thing. But all of my stuff was really roped up in that. It was really roped up in what you were supposed to do and the timeline in life and who you're supposed to be and what it's supposed to look like and you know living through your parents' shoes or whatever the meaning is that you make, you know. So um but I've done stuff like that too now that I know like through my career and how I make sense of that and um through like body positivity and how I make sense of that and like social we have ton like we love social constructs now. It's like our favorite thing. After 2020, everyone's like social construct heaven. So now I think it's a lot easier to navigate those things as well. So who's to say it wouldn't have been, you know, COVID or something else that would have shooken that loose. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I wish I had figured it out way sooner. Like I would have a way better 20s if I had learned that sooner.
So the idea of that's ingrained very young, in order to be loved, you have to be around people or you have to have a significant person to prove that you're loved. If that was unwound and there was a practice of centering oneself from we high regularly, do you think that our society would be healthier? There would be less of this grabbing that's going on?
I would like to think so, but I think that to introduce that would take a lot. And I think that it's important that we try because there could be a detachment from what we think the way things are. But even that can become a social construct, right? Like even at whatever it is we're trying to teach can also become the construct. And I
Yeah.
think that generationally, we tend to fight against the thing from the last generation because we're trying to do it better and we're trying to correct it. So who's to say that the next generation after that won't be like, well, this is stupid because X, Y, and Z, and I don't want to do it. And they, you know, either find their own way or find their own thing. But I think for in terms of my generation and what I've gone through, that sounds like a great next step towards getting people to not be so wrapped up in what they think needs to happen and to be more in tune with just what is.
Mm. And what do you do personally to help yourself get centered? Do you have a morning routine?
I do have I have a morning routine. I used to meditate very regularly and I don't anymore and I'd like to get back to it. Um, but I'm like a mover, like I need to be moving. Like I like going for like really long walks in nature. I like going to the beach. I don't live near the beach right now, which is unfortunate for me, but I like to do that. I like to listen to music to change my state. I cycle a lot. I lift, I work out a lot. Like I like to be in my body and not in my head. And I think that when I balance that with things like meditation or just detaching from like the screen or the phone or just the distractions and the noise, and just to take a moment, that is helpful in and of itself, even if I'm not going into a full on meditation or full on workout or full on, something like that, just to have those moments to separate from the rest of the chatter and the noise and the chaos.
And do you like to do it in the morning?
I usually do it in the afternoon. I feel like it's not the best. I feel like I should probably like habituate myself to do it in the morning or in the evening even. I think it'd be even more beneficial in the evening. I do have a practice where I will take note of what I accomplished for the day, just to figure out what I need to get done the next day. And that way I don't do that thing that you see in all the memes where it's like, oh, brain wakes up when you're in bed and tries to solve all the world's problems. So I try to get really quality sleep in that way. So it would be probably beneficial if I could do that list and then tack some meditation on after that, and then completely just detach from my day so that I don't take all that stuff to bed with me, because I like really quality sleep. Big fan. Really
Right. Yeah, it's so important for the brain, right? That's one area that we can actually change and make a huge difference, getting that deep rest that we all need. And meditation can help with the thoughts being processed. And those of you who don't know or are struggling with the practice, just a reminder, you can always go and check out Vedic meditation stories. The link is there. It's an ebook with stories that are written in the voice of people who learn the practice. So there's been no editing on purpose, and you can really feel the vibration of someone from where they were to where they are now. And that's way more powerful, I find, to really see where this practice, the practice of meditation, has made a difference for someone and getting centered.
I've never heard it not make a difference. I've never seen it not make a difference ever. Like I've seen people be frustrated with it, right, when they first try, but I've never seen it not help.
Well, that's also because that's another social construct, isn't it, of what you're supposed to look like when you meditate, what these ideas are. And if you're new, just tuning in, if you can like and subscribe and put in any challenges you have with meditation, and we will like answer you back. But go into the description. We're talking about meditation and how basically Kristen is saying it's never not helped. But this idea that we're supposed to grab something straight away and be expert, right? And that's not the reality. Is everyone knows getting centered, helping the mind really actually makes the day better, interacting with other people, less FOMO pretty much. And yet everyone thinks they're supposed to be able to do something. I like to say to people when they tell me I can't meditate, I didn't quite get there. I'm like, where are you going? Where are you going? Your whole point is to be here. Be here now, not there. Right.
I noticed that when I meditate, and it's one of my favorite things about meditating is that when I get like, when I in the act of it and engaging in it, it feels to me like all of the things that are causing all of like the angst and the inflammation and the stuff like kind of just separates out of you, so that you have some distance between you as a being and your life that's going on. And I feel like sometimes that's just like, I don't have to get anywhere or like, I feel like just the act of doing that sometimes is enough just to experience that separation. And then from there, you can take it in all kinds of great places. But for me, that's always been my favorite part of meditating is the detachment and disconnection from
the ability to go within. Well, if you want to find out more about Kristen, as I said, she's at the podcast. You will find out a little bit more when she interviews guests in regards to from a mental health professional. And we're going to go into part 2 if you want to have the fast fire questions. Hopefully that you will like this video and subscribe. We thank you so much for watching. And right now we're just going to say goodbye to end of part 1.
Bye.